This video outlines a procedure on how to graph a quadratic function. What I'm going to outline is slightly different than what's in the text, but hopefully you'll find it a little bit easier. So the first thing I'm going to do, let's call it step 0, is just identify the basic shape that I'm looking for. So if a, this constant in front of the x squared term, is positive, the shape looks something like this. It's an upward facing parabola. And if a is negative, the shape is a downward facing parabola. If a is equal to 0, I don't actually have a parabola because this term wouldn't be there and I'd find a line. So I'm not going to cover that in this video. So that's step 0. I'm just going to look at the constant in front of x squared and determine the basic overall shape. Step 1 is I'm going to find the zeros of the function. And the zeros you could find using the quadratic equation. X would be negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Step 2 is I'm going to find the vertex. So the vertex is halfway in between, the average distance between the two zeros. So it's the term without this plus or minus in the quadratic equation. The vertex, that's either the minimum if a is positive or the maximum value if a is negative, would be negative b over 2a. And then the last step is I like to just plot a few more values just to get a better idea of what the graph really is. Let's do a few examples of this process. So here's an example. What about if I have f of x equals 3x squared minus 2x minus 1. Okay, so my step 0 is to identify that this is an upward facing parabola because the coefficient of x squared is positive. Next step, step 1, I'm going to find the zeros. The zeros, using the quadratic equation, are at x is equal to 2 plus or minus the square root of 4 plus 12 over 6. So using this quadratic equation, and let's see here, if you simplify this a little bit, I believe you get negative 1/3 and 1. So I'm going to come over here and start drawing my parabola. I know it's upward facing, and at this point, I know if I plug in negative 1/3, I get 0. And if I plug in 1, I also get 0. Next, step 2 is I'm going to find the vertex. So the vertex is pretty easy to find. It is 2 over 6, or 1/3. If I plug in 1/3 into my function, so I plug in 1/3 here, so I get 3 times 1/9 minus 2 times 1/3 minus 1. Let's see here, that's negative 4/3. And then I've identified the minimum value of my parabola. So I come down here at negative 4/3 and over here at positive 1/3, and I find my minimum. So I know the basic shape of the parabola. It goes like this, but if I want to know a little bit more, I can always be safe and plug in a few more values. So for example, if I plug in 0 for x, I should get out negative 1. That's always a good value to plug in because it's easy to do the calculation in your head. So over here at x equals 0, I'm at y equals negative 1. And you could plot more points if you like, but at this point, I think I'm ready to draw a nice, smooth parabola that goes like this. Let's do a couple more examples. So how about if I plot f of x Let's try negative x squared plus x minus 3. Okay, step 0 is understanding the basic shape I'm looking for. In this case, it's a downward-facing parabola. The zeros are at x is equal to, let's see here, negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 1 minus 12 all over negative 2. So if you do a little bit of the calculation, I believe you'll get 1/2 times 1 plus or minus the square root of 11i. There are no real roots. There are no place on this parabola where you cross this x-axis. Therefore, it's a downward-facing parabola that lies below the x-axis. The vertex is fairly easy to find. It is 1/2. And if I plug in 1/2 into my function here, I believe you will get negative 11/4. So let's come over here and start drawing our picture. So it's a downward-facing parabola, and it's below the x-axis. If I plug in 1/2 here, I get negative 11/4. So there's my vertex. And in this case, it really is a good idea to plot a few more values. So I'm going to plot in 0, x equals 0. If I get 0, I get negative 3. So here at 0, I'm down here at negative 3, I guess. And if I plug in, let's plug in 1. So if I plug in 1, then I get negative 3 as well. So if I plug in 1, I'm here at negative 3. Now, for the sake of time in this video, I'm not going to plot in more values, but if you'd like, it's always a good idea to plot more. And at this point, I'm ready to draw my picture, and I like my parabola. Now let's do one final example to finish this video. So here is an example. What if I had f of x is equal to x squared minus 6x plus 9? Okay, basic shape is upward-facing parabola. The zeros, you can use the quadratic equation if you'd like. So you get x is equal to 6 plus or minus the square root of 36 minus 36 all over 2, which is just one value. In this case, the part under the square root is 0, so I only get one root. So I have an upward-facing parabola with one root. That means the parabola just touches, this bottom part just touches the x-axis. Here, let's start drawing that. So if I'm over at x equals 3, then I have the vertex of my parabola. So actually that's step 2. The vertex is x equals 3. Let's plot a couple more points to just round out the picture. So if I plug in 0, I get 9. If I plug in 1, I get 4. So here's 1. Over here I get 4 and 9. So you could plot more, but at this point I'm ready to draw my picture. I think it goes up just like this. Okay, wonderful.